Ultimate Key to Happiness by Robert Scheinfeld, Chapter 5. The Mind Machine. There is no such thing as positive and negative emotions, pleasurable or painful emotions, helpful and damaging emotions, feel good or feel bad emotions, but it seems like there is. Something must be creating the illusion of positive and negative, pleasure and pain, helpful and harmful. That something is what I call the mind machine. Depending on your awareness of traditional definitions, you may think that I'm calling the mind machine is the same what's usually called the subconscious mind, unconscious mind, or ego. In some ways, those comparisons are accurate, but in many other ways, as you'll see, they are not. Key point: you're invited to simply look at the mind machine in the way I depicted it here, and resist the temptation to compare or cobble it together with other ideas or concepts like subconscious, unconscious, ego, etc. In this chapter, we'll be looking at the mind machine. We'll be looking at what the mind machine is, how it works, and how it actually makes the illusion of positive and negative emotions appear real. Key point: it is important to look at everything I share about the mind machine as a metaphor, a model designed to point to something that's impossible to define precisely with words, ideas, and concepts. The metaphors and model I'm using are very accurate and extremely supportive, but they're still just metaphors and models. You can argue with them, poke holes in them, debate them, and break them if you want, but I invite you to resist any temptation that arises to do so. I could write an entire book on the mind machine alone, maybe more than one book, but I'm keeping this description brief and focused on our purpose here. Our machines, including computers, operate according to rules, programs, and formulas. Take the Google search engine, for example. The Google search engine sits quietly and waits for you to visit and type in a search phrase. When you do, it observes that you type in buzzes and words, searches its database, runs specific programs, applies specific formulas, algorithms, and search results pop up on the screen. Input, buzzword, output, lightning fast, mechanical, and machine-like. Of course, the quality of the results Google returns is totally dependent on the quantity and quality of what's stored in its database, the nature of the program it runs, and the specifics contained within algorithms. If you type something into Google that doesn't recognize it'll still buzz and whirl and pop out results, but they won't help you. Remember this, as it becomes important later. The Google database was built and continues to grow based on what's happening in the internet-based world. As things happen on the internet, Google finds out about them and adds new entries on its database, filling and classifying them accordingly to its programs and algorithms. The folks at Google are obsessed with providing the most accurate results possible, so they change the program and algorithms frequently in an effort to constantly improve. The mind machine works the same way. The mind machine has been observing your life, adding to this database, creating and storing rules and formulas, and modifying programs and algorithms since you were born. Like Google, the mind machine sits quietly waiting for something to appear in inner space or story space. When something appears, the mind machine, like Google, buzzes, whirls, searches its database, runs its programs, applies its algorithms, and out pops a result that you become aware of. Input, buzzword, output, lightning, fast, mechanical, machine-like. However, with the mind machine, the result is a story about what's observed in inner space or story space, a story that's told with thoughts, emotions, and sensations. For purposes of discussions here, imagine that when the mind machine buzzes and whirs after observing something in inner space or story space, a program runs that attempts to answer 3 questions. First, what is this? Second, what does it mean? Third, how should I respond? To answer the questions, just like Google, the Mind Machine searches its database for relevant entries. If it finds relevant entries, again, just like Google, it analyzes them in an attempt to find the best answers. All of your life, the Mind Machine has been observing appearances in inner space and story space, asking three questions, answering three questions based on the information stored in its database and the programs and algorithms that process the information, storing all the appearances and results in its ever-expanding database, refining its programs and algorithms to get more and more efficient, putting as much of buzzword output on autopilot as possible. If you resonate with what I share in this book, you'll have the opportunity and ability to slow the activity in inner space enough to see Mind Machine in motion. To do its job, the Mind Machine must, first, break everything it observes into pieces, label the pieces with words, build stories about the pieces, store the pieces' words and stories in its database. For example, when the Mind Machine observes objects in story space, it separates and labels them in chairs, cars, trees, mountains, people. When it observes emotions in inner space, it separates them and labels them as anger, fear, frustration, depression, happiness, excitement, and peace. As you grow up, the Mind Machine learns. It catalogs everything it observes and stores the catalog in its database. Then, whenever it observes something that's already in its database, it can answer three questions at lightning fast speed. When the Mind Machine doesn't recognize what it observes, the response time can be much slower, and like Google, the results aren't always accurate or helpful. The cataloging process continues throughout your life as the Mind Machine encounters more and more appearances that aren't in its database. Therefore, at this point in your life, because so many movement and frequencies of energy appearing in inner space have been cataloged by the Mind Machine, when a specific one appears and the Mind Machine asks for the first question, what is this? It finds a match at lightning fast speed and outputs the name of the emotion when it tells you its story. To answer the second question, what does this mean? The Mind Machine must search its database looking for the past references or past stories to determine the significance or importance of what has been observed. When the Mind Machine asks what does this mean about people, places, things, or events in story space, it's more complicated. But when it asks the questions about emotions, it's very simple. When the Mind Machine asks what does this mean about emotions, it's looking for data on a positive, negative, pleasurable, painful, helpful, harmful, judgmental dynamic. Just like it can output the name of an emotion at lightning's fast speed, the Mind Machine can also output the positive, negative, pleasurable, painful, helpful, harmful judgment at the lightning fast speed. Story spaced event, emotions appears. This is anger, this feels bad. Buzzword, lightning fast, mechanical, and machine-like, just like Google, really. You then become aware of the output, accept it as true and accurate, and believe you're actually feeling anger, fear, frustration, or depression, and feeling really bad, or actually feeling happiness, excitement, and peace, and feeling really good, except you're not. It's just a story, an illusion, a mental magic trick. And now here's the really fascinating thing. There's nothing in the emotional movement or frequency of energy itself, what I call the pure raw experience, that actually says this is anger, this is depression, this is frustration, this is happiness, this is peace, this is serenity. There's nothing in the movement of or frequency of energy itself, the pure raw experience that tells you it's bad, unpleasant, or harmful. We were speaking about negative emotions. The pure raw emotional experience is just what it is, a movement and frequency of energy, not good or bad, or pleasurable or painful. Now, obviously, The flip inside is what is also true. There's nothing in the pure raw emotional experience that says the movement or frequency is good or pleasurable. All the names and judgments are merely what I'm fond of calling big lies, illusions, and stories kicked out of the mind machine. To answer the final question, how should I respond? The mind machine must again search its database, guided by the meaning it's assigned when it answers the second question. It will search all the records in the database, everything that happened to you in the past, that you've learned, all the conclusions that draw from those experiences, all the rules and formulas that were created for how to live life, succeed, stay safe. An action will then be chosen and you'll notice yourself taking it. As you might imagine, there's an infinite variety of responses that can appear as this process completes. Then, after the Boswell analysis has been completed, new things appear in either space and story space, and three questions process repeats itself endlessly. When the mind machine is in learning mode as you are growing up, your responses to the observation of specific movements and frequencies of energy in inner space are inconsistent. As you get older, however, after a lot of data has been processed by the mind machine, specific programs and algorithms get created and are locked into place. After that, anytime the mind machine observes a movement of energy it already has in its database, it will buzz and whir and say, oh, I know what that is. That's anger, and that's bad. Oh, I know what that is. That's peace, and that's good. I know what that is. That's happy, and that's good. From that moment on, the mind machine assigns the same labels and meanings and responds to the same way over and over on autopilot, and so clicky that we don't even notice it's happening. Once these dynamics lock into place, we conveniently forget that. Through the buzzword of the mind machine, we broke the movements and frequencies into pieces. We named the pieces, we judged the pieces, and we accept the lies, illusions, and stories about the pieces as true. Key point. As long as you believe there are really positive and negative emotions, the positives are good, the negatives are bad, and happiness is one of the positives, you'll never be truly happy. Never. Why? As long as there's a program in the mind machine that splits emotion into positive and negative, the mind machine will always boost where create the split. And while you'll tell yourself you're happy when you feel the positive, you will always be negatives you'll try to avoid. There will always be negatives you'll try to avoid. Key point. The fact that the pure, raw experience of emotions is neutral, isn't an idea or a concept, is what you actually experience when you experience the truth. Part of the magic trick I just described involves two elements being bonded together so tightly you can no longer tell they're separate things. First, the movement and frequency of energy itself, the pure raw experience. Second, the mind machine judgmental story about the pure raw experience. To help you really get and integrate what I mean, I want to share a metaphor with you, the metaphor of water. When you look at water in an ocean, lake, stream, or glass, you see water. From a chemical perspective, however, it's actually H2O, which means two molecules of hydrogen and one molecule of oxygen that have been bonded together. When the two elements bond, they create something new called water. If you could see the separate molecules of hydrogen and oxygen, they couldn't look like water, they're just molecules. But when they bond together, all of a sudden they create water. The separate elements of hydrogen and oxygen disappear, and what we experience in a variety of different ways is water. Let's now apply the metaphor to our experience of emotions. Our emotion experience begins with the appearance in inner space of a movement of energy vibrating in a specific frequency, a pure raw experience. Think of the pure raw experience as it as if it were one molecule of oxygen. Then the mind machine hijacks the pure, raw emotional experience, names it, judges, and tells you a story about it. Think of the mind machine name and judgmental story as if they were two molecules of hydrogen. The pure raw experience, oxygen, bonds with the mind machine story, hydrogen, and you think you're experiencing something specific, and you think you're experiencing specific positive emotions that feel good and specific negative emotions that feel bad. Water. Going back to the water metaphor, if hydrogen and oxygen remain bonded, it's going to appear like water if you separate the hydrogen and the oxygen. However, the elements return to their separate states and the water disappears. Similarly, if you either separate the pure raw emotional experience from the mind machine story about it, or better yet, stop bonding from occurring in the first place, you experience the pure raw emotional experience on its own, which is true happiness. Okay, let's now look at the specific examples of the mind machine in action as it relates to emotions. I'm going to choose several examples that you may or may not have actually experienced yourself. Whether you've experienced them or not, you'll receive great support from these specifics illustrated. I am going to take some creative liberties with the example to illustrate key points, so don't be concerned if the mind machine puzzles and whirls and tells you the example are unrealistic. The first step is that something happens in story space. For our first example, imagine that a married couple is standing in a kitchen at a party. Imagine the woman notices her male partner staring at an extremely attractive blonde woman with what appears to be something extra in his look. The mind machine observes it. When it asks the questions, "What is this?" the answer is simple. My partner is staring at an extremely attractive blonde woman. Lightning fast, mechanical, and machine-like. It will then ask the second question, "What does this mean?" The mind machine will likely consider these possibilities as it scans its database. Has he lost interest in me? Is he attracted to her? Are they having an affair? Will they have an affair? Am I in danger? As the mind machine scans its database, there are several possible answers to the question. The possibilities and answers will be shaped by what's in the database. If the marriage is solid, that data will suggest certain possibilities. If the male partner has a history of strain, or the woman has been suspected has been having an affair, that data will suggest other possibilities. Get the idea? After the mind machine buzzes and whirls, a meaning will be chosen and assigned. For our example, let's choose this meaning. I suspect he might be having an affair. At that moment when the question is answered, the inner movement of emotional energy will start moving in a certain way and be tuned to a specific frequency. Part of the tuning process involves the movements of energy expressing itself with a specific speed of intensity that influences what it appears on the scale from quiet to active to storm-like. The intensity will be determined by the buzz whirl of the mind machine based on what's stored in its database, programs, and algorithms, and the frequency will be given a name. Based on what's been cataloged and stored in the mind machine, it will be named fear, anger, or jealousy. The specific name chosen will be determined by the data, programs, and algorithms stored in the mind machine based on past experiences. For this example, let's go with jealousy. Since this story is an intense one, meaning you might be in danger of losing your partner, it's likely the frequency will be fast and intense as it appears in inner space. The mind machine will observe the intense jealousy frequency appearing in inner space and make the judgment, this feels bad. The woman will then accept the jealousy and bad stories without questioning them, and she's really believes she's jealous and that she feels bad. Boom! The magic trick is complete, faster than a blink of an eye. The meaning assigned to an experience in story space might or might not be accurate description of what actually happening. In this example, the partner may or may not be having an affair, may or may not even have interest in the blonde woman at all, but it doesn't matter. The inner movement of energy will still move as it moves. It will still be tuned to a certain frequency. It will still be named and judged. And you'll still be convinced you're actually feeling what the mind machine story says you're feeling. Truth be told, it's not jealousy. It's just a movement and frequency of energy in inner space that has been given a name. Without a story kick out by the mind machine, it doesn't feel good or bad. It's just what it is. You could call it neutral or pleasurable. It doesn't really matter. Ultimately, when you experience true happiness, you'll perceive all movements and frequencies of energy as being welcome and pleasurable. The final question, how should I respond, will then be asked and answered, and a response will ultimately appear in the story space in the form of an action. Then the process of asking and answering the three questions will repeat as the new things appear in inner space and story space. Let's look at another example. Now, imagine you're driving your car and the mind machine observes another car running a red light and coming toward you at high speed. The mind machine will answer the first questions, what is this, by saying a car is running a red light. And the second question, what does this mean, by saying something like, this is dangerous, I'm not safe. After meaning is assigned, the inner movement of energy will begin to move in a specific way and be tuned to a specific frequency. Since this story is an intense one, meaning you could be killed, it's likely the frequency would be fast and intense as it is. As it appears in inner space, the mind machine observes that frequency and repeats the same sequence of questions. What is this? It will research its database for a similar reference. It likely will conclude, this is fear, I'm afraid. What does this mean? It will search its database for a similar reference. It's likely it will conclude, fear is bad and uncomfortable. I don't like it. How should I respond? It will search its database for a similar reference. It's likely it will conclude, I'll better jam on the brakes and swerve to protect myself. I could go on with examples, but I think you get the idea. If you want to watch a video where I share several other detailed examples, visit the page on my website www.robertscheinfeld.com/video-examples. It's important at this point to summarize what you've discovered so far. The inner movement of energy moves in a specific way and gets tuned into a specific frequency in response to what's happening in story space. That's pure raw experience. Pure raw experience never has a name. There's never anything bad or wrong or uncomfortable about pure raw experience. Pure raw experience just is. The mind machine observes pure raw experience. It buzzes and whirs and kicks out the story with a name and a judgment of the pure raw experience. We accept the story as true. Key point, pure raw experience always appears first in its pure raw state, and then the mind machine hijacks it and tells a judgmental story about it. What would you think will happen if the story is separated from the pure raw experiences? What would you think will happen if the mind machine hijacks stopped? What do you think will happen if no name or judgmental story has ever bonded to the pure raw emotional experience in the first place? The movement and frequency of emotional energy will continue to move in an infinite variety of ways and get tuned to an infinite variety of frequencies in response to what happens in story space. You'll be aware of all of them. You'll welcome them all. And you'll welcome and appreciate all of them. No names, labels, or judgments, just pure, raw emotional experience, which is true happiness. I mean that literally. I actually mean you'll experience the full range of movements and frequencies, but no names will ever appear in your mind. No labels, no judgments, just pure raw experience. Key point, this is precisely how I and many other people worldwide are experiencing emotions right here, right now. Anger, frustration, sadness, depression, fear, peace, excitement, even happiness dissolve and merge into true happiness. All emotions merge into one welcome flow, an even more extraordinary way than what I illustrated with the example of the roller coaster rides, great novels, and great movies. This is real, it's practical, it's doable by you. You really do it with novels, movies, sporting events, amusement parks, etc. Now it's just time to do it with everything that happens to you. I'm not talking about intellectual understanding here. Let's make that point crystal clear. Simply understanding that a judgmental story has been bonded to a pure raw experience and that the negative and positive emotion do not exist does you absolutely no good. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about actually seeing it, actually experiencing the truth of it. Once you see and experience the truth, it's game over for unhappiness. Once you see and experience the truth, it's game over. Over for hamsters on wheels and dogs chasing rabbits on rice tracks. If the secret to experiencing true happiness is experiencing pure raw emotional experience without the judgmental stories of the mind machine tells about it, then I guess the $1,000,000,000 question is, how do I do that? Thank you. Turn the page to find out. I have no time right now. Thank you.